If you like this episode, please subscribe, share with others, rate and review so we can continue to bring you great programming.
This is The Thing About Cars, a podcast for car enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Hello and welcome to The Thing About Cars. I'm Mickey Desai. A full crew around the table today. Let's go around and do introductions. Dave, how are you, sir?
A little frightened based on the pre-show antics of what today's show is going to be like.
It's going to be a good show for sure. Dawn, how are you?
I am fantastic.
Yes, you are fantastic. Am I allowed to tell the gang that it's your birthday?
You can. Today is my day. It's
Yoo-hoo!
March 5th. It's my day.
Happy
March
birthday.
5th. Yeah, March 5th is Dawnukkah.
Anonymous.
Most wonderful time of the year.
Tim,
Monday.
trivia czar Tim, how are you, Tim?
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thanks.
Fantastic. And Misty, all the way in the Netherlands, as usual. How goes it, Misty?
I am in Aston Martin Green.
That's cool. And who's the cat in your lap?
This is Trixie. She struggles. She has all the social skills of a Linux sysadmin. In addition, and that was before she turned 18 and started developing dementia. So I'm holding her here so she's not standing at the bottom of the stairs screaming.
Yes, understood. Ben, sir, how goes it?
It goes really well. How about you?
It's going extremely well. Good stuff here in the Desai household. And our guest for the day, the one, the only Dan Plan. How are you, Dan?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, glad you could make it. Thanks for being our guest today. Dan, we always start the show with a trivia question. Tim, do we have a trivia question ready for today? I don't think I have anything.
No, I sent everything to you that I had.
Well, I may have lied. We may not have a trivia question ready.
I've got a reserve of some.
Okay, go for it,
To
Ben.
bring one up.
All right. Awesome.
You can see how organized we are, Dan.
If I can find him here. We may need to do a little editing right here while I open this.
That's fine. Dan, while Ben is pulling up the trivia question, how did we find you? How did you find us?
I went to high school with Ben's wife. I probably haven't seen her in 35 years, but we're friends on Facebook, so she reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in being on the show.
Yes, and we're glad you're here. What do you do in the world of automotiveness?
About 20 years ago, I started writing a column for a short track racing paper, and then I bought the paper from my friend back then. I've had it for 20 years now, and it's just mainly monthly during the racing season up here from May through October. And then I do a digital online version in the winter months, because there's really nowhere to distribute a racing publication in the winter up here. So we just do an online version. And then I've always videotaped the races. So I have a YouTube channel where I put up racing highlights and stuff like that.
That's very cool. Why short track?
That's what I grew up with. My dad took me since I was in diapers. Still get out. So my dad doesn't go very often. I try to drag him out whenever I can. My son is an avid short track fan too, so it's kind of a family thing. Just always been part of our weekend lives.
Understood. Let's come back to that. It looks like Ben has gotten us a trivia question ready.
I think so, and I'm actually not sure that we haven't used this one already, but if we have, it's been so long that nobody probably remembers, so let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what was the first production car to feature a turbocharged engine? Was it the 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Monza, the 1968 BMW 2002 Ti, the 1973 Porsche 911, or the 1962 Oldsmobile Cutlass?
My goodness. That's quite a set of choices. I don't think we have ever asked that question before.
So, okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we will answer that at the end of the show. Back to Dan. Let's start from the top. Dan, what is short track racing? What makes it different from any other kind of racing?
At that level, it's mainly a hobby. It's not like NASCAR Indy where it's somebody's job. It's a weekend activity for a lot of these people. So rather than having a boat or a motorcycle or up here a snowmobile, they have a race car that they work on during the week, and then go out and play with on weekends. There are some of the teams up here are professionally based, so they have a couple crew guys and go travel and race professionally. But most of the stuff I go to is just the weekend warrior type stuff. They're just out there to have fun and hopefully pay the bills by the end of the weekend with the prize money.
Yeah, which prize money, you say?
Most of them don't pay. I mean, maybe the guy that wins might cover his tire bill and pit passes, but otherwise it's a losing proposition.
Right.
Yeah. What are the cars like, just to give us a picture of them?
There's quite a wide variety. There's the top of the line up here is what's called a late model, so it's a fabricated tube chassis, coilover shocks and springs, aftermarket bodies on them, and then all the way down to like the Hornet class is what they call it, which is just knock the glass out, take the headlights and taillights out, and put a roll cage in a little 4-cylinder car and race those around. So pretty much anything store bought or just something from a junkyard.
That's amazing. So literally anybody who just wants to do some racing can find a way to get in with, it sounds like, any class of car.
Yeah, it's getting a little harder these days. Like when I grew up, almost everything, was an old street car that transformed into a race car. But now most of the divisions are purpose built. There's never touched the street. So
yeah. On a typical race weekend, how many classes are there?
It varies. An efficient program only has like 3, maybe 4. Some of them that's something I was pointing out to my son, is that like when I was a kid, there was like 2 or 3 divisions back in the 70s. And now some tracks have, 5 or 6 divisions, and there's pretty much the same number of drivers. It's just there's so many different classes that you don't have big races anymore. You just have 5, 10 or 15 car divisions instead of 20 or 30 car divisions.
And what do you drive, or do you drive in any of these races?
I do not. I've had the opportunity to, a friend of mine owns a vintage car, like an old 30s coupe. He let me drive that once. And then my old roommate at the time, he raced in what was called the hobby stock class. I got to drive that a couple times, but no, I think that's a quick way to go broke, is owning a race car. So I've always mainly just watched or been on a pit crew. I have a 72 Nova. That's my pride and joy out in the garage. It's not a race car. It's just a street car. So
1972 Nova. Let me go get a picture of this real quick. Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely. That's nice. So that's cool. I want to ask questions about like how big is the fan base for short track? I mean, here in Georgia, there's a wide variety of car subcultures, right? But I don't think I've ever personally run across anybody who does short track around here. Have my fellow Georgians ever been to any short track events here in the state?
Yes. And it's a question of whether you're talking dirt or asphalt, but
any of the above, I would think.
Right. And Dan, when you said talking about short track, do you cover both?
Yeah, I go both. I actually just watched the race from Sonoya, Georgia last night down at dirt track down there. It was on the streaming platform that I subscribed to. So, but I guess they had a lot of rain this past week, so the track conditions weren't real favorable down there.
Yes. Yeah, because I've been to Dixie Speedway here in Woodstock, I believe it is, Georgia, and back a long time ago, Linear Speedway when it was still operational, which is across the street from Road Atlanta, where I do most of my racing activities. I think both asphalt and dirt have a big following here in Georgia. If you're the right crowd, I guess.
Clearly, I need to get out more.
We all do.
Yeah, it's very true.
I think throughout the country, the weekly shows are suffering a little bit when it comes to crowds, but the special events still do well. The dirt track that's closest to me up here is Cedar Lake Speedway, and they probably have 4 events that fill a place to capacity. I think they have seating for 10,000. And those 4 events are filled to capacity, but the regular Saturday night shows, there's no problem finding a seat these days.
But people still drive.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of my frustrations with fans is they'll spend a lot of money to go to the big shows, but the competition that the weekly racers put on is just as good. They just don't have the name association going with them, but they still race just as hard. It's kind of like up here you got the wild hockey team, but the high school kids play just as good, I think, sometimes. So
yeah, you keep saying up here, so where in the world are you?
I'm way up in Minnesota.
Way up in Minnesota.
I thought I recognized that accent.
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yeah.
Are you within sight of the lake?
Oh yeah. Which one?
There's one of the 10,000 lakes. There's not any near me.
I was gonna say, which lake? There's so many.
Yeah.
The big one, the really, really big one that sits atop Minnesota. Isn't that like Superior or something?
Yeah, no, I'm a couple hours away from there. I'm not quite that far up there, but I have visited that, and I actually put my feet in the water one year, but I don't think that water ever gets warmer than like 40 degrees. I don't think I would ever swim in Lake Superior.
Yeah, people do, and I don't understand it. I guess
No.
you have to have some sort of Nordic or Netherland blood or something.
No, and that's like me in the North Sea. I'm like, I'll go to the North Sea to, like have a drink at a bar or something, but then I'm like, yeah, I'm not putting my feet in that. It's cold.
Misty, you've never purified yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka?
I have not.
I don't even go to Lake Lanier. Admittedly, Lake Lanier eats people, but that's another story for another episode.
I drive by it quite a bit.
Yeah.
My mom lives like right real close by. I blame this diminishing audience for these local events. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna blame it on Netflix. Because it's just so much easier to stay at home and, watch Drive to Survive. Although admittedly Gunther Steiner's hysterical, but I mean, me, if I had some short track closer to me, I mean, I would certainly be there.
Yeah, and I think some people faulted on the streaming services, but for me, I'd rather be there in person watching it than watching it on TV. But the streaming stuff is nice for me because realistically, I couldn't have driven to Sonoya, Georgia to watch a race last night, but I can just sit in my recliner on a Saturday night and watch it. So it's,
right.
For the ones that are far away, I enjoy the streaming. But again, the ones that are close to home, I'm going to go sit in person so you can see the sights and the smells and all that good stuff associated with automobiles.
Yeah, that's the thing. I haven't been to a lot of automobile races in my life, but the few I have, the thing I can say is that it's an experience that no form of telemedia can reproduce.
Yeah,
and I mean, visceral.
My,
Go ahead, Dan.
My paper it's focused on short track racing, but if it's got a motor in it, I'm probably gonna go watch it. I've been up to Brainerd for the drag races and the Trans Am races, and then we had the snowcross, the big snowmobile deal here at Canterbury Park, and one of my son's friends does flat track motorcycle racing, so I've been to a few of those shows. So I'd like to anything motor related. I'm probably going to go watch it if it's close by.
Yes, one of these days I get my calendar to level out so that I can actually make some time to do some of these things. That would be very cool. There was something I was going to ask you. Of course, it went in one ear and right out the other. What do you do when you're not doing short track stuff?
Well, I'm working part-time now. I was working full-time for the same company for about 15 years, but I just got to a point where house is paid for, cars are paid for, kids grown up and moved out. So it's actually a guy who was a short track racer, owns a company and needed some help. So I'm working part-time for him a couple days a week. And then I have another friend that does a column in the paper. She started up a podcast, so we do interviews with drivers from the area. And,
very cool.
She posts on a YouTube channel and the different various podcast platforms. So enough to keep me busy.
Sure,
Dan,
absolutely.
what's the name of that podcast?
It's Racing Nuggets.
Racing Nuggets. And do you guys have your own website, or can we just find you on YouTube?
I think it's on YouTube under Racing Nuggets, and then I believe her website is also racingnuggets.com.
It is youtube.com/c/racing nuggets will take you to the channel. At least I think this is your channel. It's got an orange car in the title bar. Does that ring a bell? Number 39? No? I guess we don't have to explain this to our listeners here. They'll find it. Racing
Right.
Nuggets.
I
Put a
think
link
I
in
want to use the term racing nuggets to describe Misty from now on.
Misty. I mean, Racing Nuggets.
I will have you know, I only had to have maybe about 1.5 feet taken off the formal dress that I just bought yesterday because I am approximately the size of a coffee table. And I will also have you know that I am tall for my family. Thank you very much. I am the tallest woman on my mother's side of the family at a whopping 5 foot 3.5 inches.
That's
They all
amazing.
live in a tree and bake cookies.
No, we are not elves, honey. I am queen of the pygmies. Jeez, get it right.
So what's the cocktail dress for, Misty? What's the formal dress for?
Oh, we have a company party on the 17th, and the theme is like James Bond, and I was really disappointed that we went James Bond and not Austin Powers. But I got a nice dress out of it anyway because my husband won't buy me a new car.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn it.
How long did that take for me to bring that up? Like 20 minutes. I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, Dan, we're telling Misty that she needs to hurry up and go ahead and get her new car and stop waiting for permission. Just go do it.
Well, it's to give you a little more background, it's, my husband bought me an MX-5 like in 2016 for Valentine's Day, and this year on Easter Sunday, I'm turning the big 50, and I was like, okay, so, like legitimately you owe me 2 cars. And he's like, you don't need a new car. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need a husband yet. Here I am. Because I am the gearhead in the family. My husband, he's like a car is a tool, and I'm like, no, honey, that would be you.
I was gonna say, so are you? That's what you
So,
said.
yes, honey, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. Mainly because the couch doesn't steal my covers.
Well, have fun at the James
anyone
Bond
tell?
party.
Yeah, can anyone tell I've been married for 25 years?
Wow. Well done, Misty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not legally married, but we've been together for close to 25 years. Wow,
Yeah.
that is a long time.
It is a long time. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Dan, how did you first get into racing?
My dad, he brought me to the races. That was something we did as a family, and then
But Dan, were you involved in the races back then as a child, or were you just a spectator back then?
Just purely a spectator. And then shortly after I got out of high school, some mutual friends, I met a person that owned a house, so I was renting a room from him, and he was racing, so I ended up being on his pit crew for about 5 years. And then when he quit, one of the guys he was racing with, I moved over to his crew and did that for a few years, probably up until about 2001. Then I've been back in more spectator mode or having my paper. I did race karts for 3 years up until from 2016 to 2019. My old friend that was roommates that raced, he got into kart racing. He did that for about 20 years, and then he finally my son started doing it first, and my son talked me into doing it. So he would race in the young skinny kid class, and I'd race in the old fat guy class. We had this shared a cart, but that got to be a bit too much wear and tear having 2 people racing the same thing all day long. So I bought my own, and then we did that for 3 years, and that was a good time. It was about an hour and a half from home, so I just drive the RV out Friday night, and we'd race Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon and come back home, and good family bonding time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That is so cool. What's the average pit stop time for a short track car?
They typically don't do pit stops. The races are short enough to where they don't change tires or need fuel. So it's, if there's no cautions, I mean, sometimes I've been to races thinking, wow, that was, because if nobody gets in a wreck, and like the fastest cars, a 30 lap race will be done in like 8 minutes or something.
Yeah,
you're just like, whoa, what happened? But usually that's what drags them out, is when they got to bring a tow truck out and drag a car off the track or something like that.
Yeah. And then with short track rules, if someone does have to pit, is it the same as in a regular race where, or let's say if they pit under caution, do they still lose the laps that they're in the pits, or does that work differently?
No, they don't lose. The races are short enough that they don't count the caution lap. So they'll go in. Some tracks, they'll, mainly on the dirt tracks, if they get a flat tire, they'll give them like 2 laps under caution to change the tire, just as a courtesy. But the paved tracks, typically, if you get a flat tire, you're out for the race. Then they're not going to give you time to fix your car.
Right.
Well, Dan, we always I'm sorry, go ahead. Anyone else have a question for Dan?
Yeah, I was wondering, I guess, I've come from a road racing background. I'm a Sports Car Club of America member. I've done some racing. I work a lot of time in scoring now. So usually we go through a weekend where you've got a practice section, a qualifying session, and then a race session. How does that equate to the world of short tracks?
On the weekly stuff, it's all one day. They open the gates at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. On the paved side, they'll practice all afternoon and then qualify and race. On the dirt side, they get about 3 laps of practice, and then they just draw for position and race. So that they don't spend all day practicing. The bigger pavement races, a lot of them, like probably the biggest one in the States is the Snowball Derby at Pensacola, Florida. And I believe everybody shows up the weekend before and practices Saturday and Sunday and Monday. And then I think Tuesday is when they bring the haulers in to officially start it. And then they practice Wednesday and Thursday, and they qualify Friday and race on Sunday. So that one's kind of a long drawn out deal, and tire expenses are huge, but everybody keeps going for it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Goodness.
So I've heard of some racing disciplines where they do multiple different races that lead to a finale race, where you have to where you have transfer spots. Is that mostly for like sprint cars, I guess? Or
yeah, sprint cars and some of the traveling short track series that are nationally based. The way the program is they show up at the track, they practice, they qualify, and then based on their qualifying is how they start their heat races. And then if you got to finish in the top 2 or 3 in the heat race to make it into the main event, and then everybody else goes into a last chance race or a B feature, and then they'll take like the top 4 from that. So if they get 40 cars, they usually only will start 24 or so in the feature. And then sometimes if there's guys that follow the series but had a bad night, they'll give them a provisional and tag on a couple extra. But yeah, that's usually how the weekly format and the traveling ones goes. They do qualifying or heat races and then the main event. The weekly shows typically don't have enough cars to send anybody home anymore, but the traveling shows usually do.
Okay.
Very cool. Any other questions for Dan before we wrap up with Dan? Anybody? Dan, we always wrap our guest segment with a handful of questions.
Right.
3 of them are standard. The 4th one is something random and silly. The first question I have for you, sir, is what is your dream car?
It's kind of weird, but my first car was a 74 Javelin. My dad bought it brand new, and then I got it in probably 83 for, that was my first car from in high school. So I kind of wished I would have held on to that one.
Yeah.
AMC Javelin. That's a good looking car, actually.
Oh yeah.
What did that have under the hood?
This one, well, 74 was during the gas crisis. So my dad bought it with the monstrous 232 cubic inch inline 6. I think it had 95 horsepower.
All right,
Yes,
cool.
the malaise of the 70s.
Yeah. Dan, question number 2. Where's your next road trip going to be?
Texas. We're going to Texas in 2 weeks.
Okay, cool. Driving to Texas, I take it. That's
My
a long
wife's-
drive from Minnesota.
We're gonna fly, but
Ah.
my wife's from Texas, so I'll visit her family, and then I always try to sneak in a race while I'm down there. So
A lot of people from Minnesota go to South Padre during spring break.
yeah,
Cool.
that was a popular thing. I never did the spring break thing growing up. I always saved my money to go to speed weeks.
Me too.
I happened to be I did South Padre my junior year and met a lot of Minnesotans.
Yeah. and how did it go with the Minnesotans, Don? Were they nice people?
Oh, they were lovely, tall, Nordic, blonde, blue-eyed people.
Always ready to hand you a beer.
Always ready to hand you a beer and show a lady a good time.
That's awesome.
Especially
All
since I turned 21 that birthday. I was on South Padre Beach.
Mhm.
Got to go and buy myself a 6-pack of Coors and Cheetos.
That's a way to break in the 21st birthday.
Tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired drink of water.
That sounds like a not bad 21st birthday, if I
That
have
was
to
a
be
pretty
perfectly
awesome
honest.
birthday.
It's pretty
I
awesome.
didn't have a tall blonde drink of water on my 21st birthday. In fact, I don't even remember my 21st birthday. But
Maybe it was that good.
I don't either.
That forgettable.
'Cause it was a long time ago.
Yep.
I got grandfathered in on the 19-year drinking age, and then everybody around me had to wait until they were 21. And then I still remember my sister's boyfriend at the time took me to a bar for my first legal drink. And he wanted to get me a Long Island iced tea, and the bartender said he only knew how to make 3 drinks: tap beer, canned beer, and bottled beer.
Oh boy.
At that point, you're probably lucky that was all he knew how to do.
That's right.
That's a hard. Starting with a Long Island, ooh la la.
Yeah. All right, Dan, question number 3. What's the most fascinating thing you've seen on the road or maybe in someone's house or garage?
That is a tough one.
Yeah.
I would have to say it was just last summer. Friend of mine that lives about an hour south of me, he built it's probably like an 8th scale replica Corvair. So
Wow.
he's got an older Corvair, and then he's got like an English wheel and all his stuff. So he hand fabricated his own Corvair body and welded up a chassis, and it's pretty cool looking that to see something that tiny but look just like the real thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
An 8th scale Corvair.
Yeah.
All right. And our last question, the thing that's random and silly. You're hosting a dinner party and can invite one famous person, living or dead. Who would that be?
Oh, John F. Kennedy.
JFK. No
Wow.
kidding.
Yeah, we always
That's enough.
stop by when we go visit my wife's family. I've always kind of been intrigued by that whole situation. So we go drive by Dealey Plaza and look at the different JFK stuff when we go down to Texas. So I'd like to know what was behind him.
Yeah.
Ben, you're about to say?
Yeah, I used to live in Dallas, and sometimes just for weird mental kicks, I'd go down to Dealey. And the one thing that I recall really well, in addition to all the usual stuff, is that on the top of the grassy knoll, there's a little white picket fence that separates it from a parking lot. And the back side of the picket fence that faces the parking always had really interesting graffiti on it. Both silly and somber.
Yeah.
The silly one I remember is somebody wrote on there, "Mr. Bean killed JFK."
And somebody's going to pick that little snippet up, and we're going to see that on a conspiracy theorist website, Ben.
Right.
Well, this has been another episode of about conspiracy theories.
Mickey, you're muted.
So that's cool. JFK for a dinner party. That's not something I would have expected. That's a really interesting answer.
It probably just popped up
Yeah.
to my mind because I know we're going to
Be
Texas in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. So Dan, again, your podcast is called Racing Nuggets. And
Yeah, I'm just a participant on it. It's my friend Jacqueline that does that. My paper is at theracingconnection.com. That's the website
theracingconnection.com.
where the
Got it.
paper is, and then the YouTube channel is also the same thing, Midwest Racing Connection.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan, for being our guest. I hope you'll hang out with us for the remainder of the show, which should only be a few minutes longer, I think.
Sure.
Dawn, what's happening for your birthday? Any new car in your garage?
No new car, but we are taking the CLK 320 out with the top down to see my folks. Rode her around a little bit yesterday, and she needs to go run, so I'm gonna go take her for a little drive.
Yep. Blow the
Nothing
carbon
new,
out, as they
though.
say.
Just a lot of old Mercedes in my driveway.
That's cool. What were the questions we were bouncing around before we got started today? There was the what was the pass? There were two things that we were talking about before.
The catalytic converter, UPass.
UPass.
I have a Bollard update.
You have a Bollard update?
It was the first Formula. It was the first Formula race of the season. It was Formula 3, Formula 2.
I really need to get back on the stick and push that T-shirt. I need to just do that.
I'm very happy to report that Phil the Bollard sustained no injuries today, and which is a absolutely fantastic result for the first race of the season.
Dan, Phil the Bollard is the mascot of the Thing About Cars.
Okay.
It's a long, complicated story, and there's been a plethora of Bollard carnage over the past couple of seasons of
Bollard's
FIA.
Bollard Carnage would be a great name for a garage band.
Yes.
Oh yes.
I think that's the name of our garage band now.
There you go, Ben. Ben plays bass on Bollard
right.
cars. Yes. So Bollard update, got it. And anyway, but catalytic converters, and I swear there was something else we were bouncing around before I hit record. But anyway, it'll come back to me. What was the thing about catalytic converters? Is that fodder for its own episodes?
It probably is. It's like, almost like, what do you have to do to prepare for your birthday? The birthday tax in Georgia, you have to pay your tag and tax, and before that you have to get your emissions test. So yeah, we can unpack that at another episode, because after doing some research, there's a lot of fuel additives that are able to basically help you pass. And so the real question is then why even do we have catalytic converters anymore if we're going to electric? And then most of us are driving older cars and people can put a fuel additive in. It's like, okay, what's the deal here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotta have something to steal.
Yeah. I mean, I've got answers if we wanted to tackle it now.
All right, no, let's not do that. We're running out of time rapidly here, so let's definitely save the catalytic converter question.
This is just a precursor sneak peek for the next episode.
Yes.
Tune in to our next exciting episode.
Well, and if we're going to be fair, the next episode is going to be about the import-export business around cars. So we had bookmarked the next recording to talk about what it means to import and or export a car. So Dan, thank you very much for being our guest today. Please do join us at the mic anytime you're feeling like just being silly with us. I promise not to ask you any more stupid questions. And Dave wants to remind me that we have a trivia answer to give at the end of the show. So Ben, what you want to finish this up for us? Take us out.
Well, I could. Does anybody want to guess on it?
Read the question and the choices again.
Read it again.
Okay. All right. What is the first production car to feature a turbocharged engine? Was it a 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Monza, a 1968 BMW 2002 Ti, 1973 Porsche 911, or 1962 Oldsmobile Cutlass?
You go ahead and drive it, Ben. You take us around the table.
All right. Misty, what do you think?
I really like the idea of the Monza because Monza, Forza Ferrari, etc. But I'm going to go with the 73 Porsche because Porsches are amazing cars, and I was born in 1973, which is like the most amazing year ever. Just throwing that out there.
Ah, yeah. What do you think, Dave?
I'm gonna go with the 62 olds.
Okay. Dan, what do you think?
I'm gonna go with Dave and the Oldsmobile.
Mickey, what's your guess?
So one of the choices is the 1962 Olds Cutlass. What was the other? There was another Olds in your equation, wasn't there?
Beamer.
Well, there was a Chevy Corvair Monza, a 68 BMW 2002 Ti, or 73 Porsche 911.
I'm going to go Corvair. No reason, just thinking Corvair.
Sounds good. What you think, Don?
Well, I know the Cutlass does have a turbo, but I don't know if it's in that year. So that I'm not quite sure. I definitely know the 911 had a turbo. I think the Corvair. So I'm like eliminating things. I'm like going. You said the first. I'm gonna have to say the Corvair only because I think the Cutlass was a little older, and I know the turbo Porsche was older. So I'm kind of going with the Corvair here.
What's Tim's guess?
Okay, I know that
Or did I ask already?
no, he didn't. I know that Corvair did have a turbo version back in that era, and I know that Oldsmobile had a turbo engine back in that same era. I'm gonna go with the Oldsmobile.
Ben taking a glass of
guess
water.
What?
Before,
Oldsmobile
yes.
is correct.
Oldsmobile is correct.
I just thought it was later. I didn't think it came along. 62, really? Wow.
Here's the thing. In 1962, the Jetfire V8 was an option for the Oldsmobile Cutlass. Option. This engine was a 3.5-liter V8, which wasn't very powerful, but this option raised the compression ratio to 10.25 to 1 and added a Garrett turbocharger. The high compression caused knocking. This was alleviated by the injection into the intake of what was branded as turbo rocket fluid, with finger quotes, which was really just a 1-to-1 mixture of water and methanol. The Jetfire option added about 30 horsepower to the engine, but it was not successful. It added $300, which was a lot back then, to the car's price, and it suffered reliability problems, and the option only survived for 1 year. The thing with the Monza is that it was introduced later in 62, but was also unsuccessful due to reliability problems. The BMW 2002 Ti was not turbocharged, so that was a trick answer. And the turbocharged variant of the 911, they were not all turbocharged, debuted for 1975. And of course, many car makers would try turbocharged models, but it would take years to work out all the kinks and drawbacks. I think they kind of peaked in the 80s until recently. Issues to be tackled included boost lag, turbine deformation, that item alone would cause a turbocharger to lose most of its efficiency by the time the car was 50,000 miles old, at least in the old days. Of course, the turbocharger was originally developed for aviation use in the 1920s, and the first patent was actually 1896.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
The history of turbo.
Yes.
Yes. Did you know that there was this is where we go into rated R world here, I think. I'm not sure we should include this, but I may clip this out. But did you know that there was a brand of condom called the Turbo Condom back in the 80s?
It's the one task in which you really shouldn't have to go fast.
Well,
right. It's like
not even
like
surprised.
The one place where you don't want.
Yeah.
It's like, who chose that?
Turbo was the buzzword back in the 80s. It was applied to all kinds of.
Oh yeah, you could get turbo
sunglasses.
Turbo
was a big buzzword in the 80s. It was applied to all kinds of things.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I think
there's even a Judas Priest album.
So was that what Prince was singing about in Little Red Corvette?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. And
probably he was singing about a lot of things.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of things. And let's also not forget that the turbo engine in the Chevy was what helped propel the Mazda MX-5 or Miata into that younger generation. Because remember when we were talking with Bob Hall, and he said that they were going up against, what was it, the Chevy Caprice, I think, or something? I can't remember now which car. I just was so into fangirl mode. But the Chevy had put the turbo engine in, which then priced it out insurance wise for anyone under 25.
Right.
So,
oh yeah.
So
circle.
we're going to wrap with that information today. Dan, again, I hope you'll join us at the mic sometime. Whenever you're feeling the urge, we'd love to have you back. And thanks as always to our audience for listening. You are a valued part of the Thing About Cars family, and we will see you again with another episode in about a week. Take care, everybody.
Happy Dawnukkah.
Happy Dawnukkah. Yes.
Happy Dawnukkah.
I like that.
Happy Dawnukkah.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Thing About Cars. We'll see you on the road.